What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 6 on the Modern Era. This is Part 3 on nationalism and the decline of the imperialist empires. Remember, imperialism from the previous time period, 1750 to 1900, and we're going to see the decline of those empires in this time period. This is Section A. We're specifically going to focus here on British India, and this is going to be our example. So I want to tell you in the next video, we'll go a little more into some of these other areas of nationalism, but for this one, we're really going to focus in on British India. This is going on, these types of things are going on around the world, but we need an example here, and this is our example, British India. So with that said, let's rock and roll here. Let's get started and go over a little synthesis. Just a reminder from last time period, and I feel like a lot of people generally remember this, so this shouldn't be too much of a surprise or a light bulb going off. Like, you should just know this stuff at this point. British East India Company, which was controlled, which was from Britain. It was a investment company that basically sent people and ships and merchants over into India during the period of the Age of Exploration from 1450 to 1750. And remember, there were trade networks there, and they were negotiating trade agreements with local princes in India or South Asia, which was under the Mughal rule. And they are basically setting up areas. As they gain more power, the British East India Company starts setting up their own governments and their own power, and they hire the sepoys, and the sepoys eventually are treated poorly, and they don't like their pay, and they rise up. One of the reasons is the gun cartridges being greased with pig and cow fat, and they rise up and they rebel. And after that rebellion, the British crown, the British government says, we're going to go in there and conquer India and control it ourselves. So Britain officially overthrows the Mughal Empire. They officially become India becomes the jewel of the crown, and it makes a ton of money for Britain. Remember, during World War I, the British are asked the Indians to fight, promise them their independence. The war's over. They say, nah, not so much. During this whole period, from the Sepoy Rebellion really on through World War I and into the 20s and 30s, we see a rise in nationalism in India. People who are demanding their independence, people who want to be free from British rule. And we see this steadily increase after World War I. This is a good little reason why for you on something, is that after World War I, promise their independence, they don't get it, they're upset, so we see nationalism increase. And essentially what we see is two separate parties or political groups challenging the British rule. The first one is the Indian National League, and it's mainly educated Indians, people from India who are sent to Britain in London to be educated because whether they were upper class, whether they showed promise in school, they were sent to India to be educated. They're sent to Britain to be educated. When they come back to India, they have ideas of the Enlightenment and democracy and freedom and all those things that the Westerners hold ideal, and they say, we don't have it here. The Indian National Congress is led by this guy, Mohandas Gandhi. He mainly uses nonviolent protests. He protests unfair laws by boycotts and marches, and allowing himself to be arrested. On the other side, the other group is the All-Muslim League. Remember, India is made up primarily of Hindu people, and the Muslims say, we want our own league to make sure our rights don't get lost. So they form what's called the All-Muslim League, and they're worried about losing power from the Hindus. So if they do get their independence, what's going to happen to this minority Muslim population, and how are the Hindus going to treat them? So this is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He is the leader of the All-Muslim League. So we have these kind of two things. They don't necessarily compete with each other. Sometimes they work side by side. They don't hate each other necessarily, but they are both two different groups looking for two different things. In India, unlike some other places that we see, like Vietnam, for example, that have to fight for their independence and fight a war over their independence, in India, they actually negotiate it. And there's something called the Indian Independence Act of 1947. So when World War II ends, and the British promise the Indians again in World War II, if you help us fight, we'll give you your independence. World War II is over. The Indians say, where's our independence? And the British say, the British are poor. They're broke after World War II from all the fighting. And they decide it's almost not worth it anymore to keep this fight and keep this colony. And the Indians have done pretty much what have been asked, so they get their independence. It's peacefully given to them. So this is all connects back to World War II, just a reminder. And in 1947, like I said, they get their independence. So the question becomes, what do we do? Because all of this, everything you see here was under British rule. And the problem that we run into is that the areas that are in dark red or reddish color here are mainly Hindu areas, majority Hindu. and then also this light pinkish kind of color. The areas that are in green are majority Muslim, and the All Muslim League says, look, here, this should not be part of the same country as this. We should get our independence and have a Muslim country and a Hindu country. So there should be a two-state solution, two different countries. By states, I mean two different countries. So we should have a Muslim country and a Hindu country. And that's what they push for when they're negotiating their independence with the British. And the British, throughout all their time there, had kind of played the Hindus off the Muslims. So there's a little bit of tension there, although the two sides sometimes work together to kick out the British. But these two sides are going to both push for a two-state solution. So a Hindu country and a Muslim country. And what occurs when they gain their independence is we see the redrawing of these colonial boundaries. The problem with it is, so we're going to create two countries. We're going to create Pakistan, which is going to be, there's going to be two parts of Pakistan, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. These are the two areas, coming back here, these are the two areas that are primarily Muslims. So we're going to create a Muslim country connected here, and then the rest is going to be a Hindu country. So we have an issue here where if you are Muslim living in India, the question becomes, do you stay in the Hindu country or do you move? And a lot of people in India who are Muslim are going to leave to go to Pakistan. And a lot of people who are Hindu living in Pakistan are going to go into India. So even though the majority of people here are Muslim, there's still people here who are Hindu. So the question becomes, what do they do? So we're going to see this huge migration of people, millions of people who are going to leave Pakistan and go into India who are Hindu, and people who are Muslim in India going to Pakistan. This is just one of the images taken of people getting ready to board trains to leave to go into the other side. So there's this huge migration going one way and the other. Also, there's an area up here that we'll get to in a second, which is called Kashmir. This is an area where it's kind of 50-50. So there's a lot of majority, there's some Hindus, there's some Muslims there, and the question becomes who gets control of that area. So we're going to redraw these lines. This whole area was was considered British India. Now we're going to redraw the map and make one side Muslim, one side Hindu, all coming back to this area of these ethnic movements or religious movements here to challenge these borders. Also with migration, so along with migration going with inside British India, we're also going to see the migration of people leaving India to go live in their former imperial country, which is Britain. So this is called metropole. This comes up in the AP exam a little bit. You might see it. It's considered to be the former colonizing country. Think metro like city, and think pole like something that pulls you, like the North Pole, the gravitational pull. So this metropole pulls, not forcibly, but voluntarily pulls people from these from the colonies back to the mother country. So in a lot of places that were former colonies, people go back to the mother country even after they gain their independence. Better, that push-pull factor. There's better job opportunities. There might be war or issues or famine in their own country. So people are going to leave and go to their mother country, whether in the Western world. A lot of time, today we see, especially in India and Pakistan, a close connection between the mother country, former mother country, Britain, and India and Pakistan, where people are going to find themselves coming, whether it's food products still shipped or cultural ideas or these close ties. If you look at Britain today or the United Kingdom, this is where the most frequent country of birth for residents from outside the UK. So you can see that even today, we have a large population of people who are whose ancestors are or themselves are from India, and the second is Pakistan. You can see there's a rise in Polish people as well, but India and Pakistan are two of the largest areas. So we see a lot of people getting pulled back into Great Britain from India and Pakistan because of the better opportunities. So if you go to the United Kingdom, if you go to Britain today, you will see large populations of people who are from South Asia, also little enclaves. We talked about that, almost like you see in the United States, Little China or Chinatown. You'll see more like a lot of Indian enclaves there with Indian restaurants and culture because of this connection, this metropole pulling people there. Last but not least, there's some issues today going on between these two. We can't ignore this as we look forward to the future and the world that we will all be living in for the next couple decades. India and Pakistan both still have an issue over this region called Kashmir. Both think that they should be in control of this region called Kashmir. It leads to a lot of tension between the two. You'll often see it pop up in the news. And the big issue is that, so like there's almost border wars going on here regularly. It was especially bad in the late 90s, but there's always little flare-ups there. The problem is that, well, the biggest problem is that India and Pakistan both have nuclear weapons. This is called nuclear proliferation. It's when you increase your nuclear stockpile. Most places around the world today, including the United States and the former Soviet Union, have nuclear non-proliferation. We're decreasing our weapons. Here in India and Pakistan, they are actually increasing their nuclear capabilities in order to compete with each other. So their nuclear weapons are pointed at them. Their nuclear weapons are pointed at them. They're fighting over this region. Scary stuff. Although we haven't seen anything happen between these two countries recently, but it's an area to keep an eye on. It's one of those hot spots. So that's what I got. India, independence, Pakistan, India, Muslim, Hindu, nuclear weapons, scary. That's all I got. Have a good day.